You log in, but there you are. I'm like, where'd he go?
I haven't changed my background.
So people register. We'll see what happens.
Did you say there was or wasn't?
There was.
Can't believe we have over 150 people registered for the next two already.
Yes. Wow, and you know, I tried to press Izzy a little. If you had seen the email,
I did.
So I was like, you know, maybe we should talk about, you know, scheduling the next one.
Yeah, well, we'll get together in July. Just bang this one out. She'll be happy and go from there.
Right.
I mean, she keeps asking for the tips of for the newsletter, so
right.
So we're in, right? She's giving you credit for those tips, so at least we're in something that's going out regular already.
Yep. Yeah. Same with Plan a Mass in Rhode Island.
Absolutely. Right. That's a great idea you had, giving those tips. Because they want them, they don't have to write them, but they give us credit for it. So.
Right. Yeah, so now you really have to make sure that you have Wi-Fi someplace in the world. Oh, shoot, I meant to have you practice with your chat to see if it worked.
Did you go and change any settings?
I looked at the settings. The settings all said fine.
It still says disabled. I do not understand it.
I wonder if it's on you. I wonder if I go on you and...
Did you disable me?
Chat. Try it now.
Oh, yep. What was it?
It for some reason you were not allowed to chat publicly with everyone.
Yeah, I told you it was you, it wasn't me.
Yeah. It was under your thing.
Yeah.
All right.
You cut me off at the heels. I didn't even know it.
You know, that's what I did. All right. So you ready to get started here?
There you are.
Okay. I got the countdown clock. I got 4 seconds. All right, welcome to another Thirsty for Knowledge Thursdays. That's the weekly webinar series brought to you by the ARIES Foundation for Financial Education, Inc. Tonight's topic, we are doing our little takeoff on those wonderful films, The Secret. This is not the life of, this is the secret cost of pets. And just to make sure here, we've got a pre-flight checklist for everybody. You know, the event is being recorded. You don't have to worry about your image or your name because the only thing that's being shown on the screen is what's in the presentation. We'd like you to keep your microphones muted. Your cameras, it doesn't matter, can be on or off. Like I said, your image is not being shared. But if you do have any questions or any comments or anything, please use the chat box. My co-pilot, who I will introduce in a second, will be manning the chat box and just making sure that we're keeping this flight on time this evening. Speaking of your pilots for tonight's journey, I'm Tom Alessi. I am the president of the ARIES Foundation for Financial Education. I have been in financial services now for I'm in my 22nd year. I am an investment advisor, which means that I act in a fiduciary capacity when giving guidance or advice to any of my clients. Craig, why don't you bring yourself in?
Sure. So I'm Craig Richardson. I'm the vice president of the ARIES Foundation. I've been doing this about 17 years now, and I work with families and small businesses to help them come up with a financial plan and have a better relationship with their money.
Tremendous. And like I said, Craig will be also checking the chat box for any questions as we go along. So We told you that the Thirsty for Knowledge Thursdays is sponsored by the ARIES Foundation for Financial Education, Inc. You can visit our website. It's www.ariesfoundation.org. Our mission statement is trying to help everyone have a better relationship with their money, because whether you realize it or not, you are in a relationship with your money. And just like any other personal relationship that you have, there are emotional triggers and certain behaviors that cause us to act sometimes irrationally, just like in any other relationship. And it's difficult to deal with when it's your money and we make bad choices sometimes. So all we try to do is try to help everybody understand that, get a better handle, and move forward in a more positive way with dealing with their money. Before we start up this evening, I do have some disclosures. Our presentations are purely educational. We just ask that if you ever share, whether it's our video or a recording, that you do it in an educational manner as well. So understand that the ARIES Foundation for Financial Education, Inc. is a nonprofit, and we are not affiliated with any broker-dealer or securities-related business, and we are not a registered investment advisor. The ARIES Foundation specifically says to, Craig and I, voice this all the time, that if you ever have any questions, whether they are legal, tax, or financial, that you seek out the help of a professional when dealing with those questions. That was a lot of talking for me now. So one of the nice things with this is Thirsty for Knowledge Thursdays, but we call it Think with a Drink. Our goal is to deliver education and information in a casual and relaxed manner, and we can't think of a better way to do that than if we are not pouring and enjoying something. So hopefully you will be able to sip along with us. For tonight, Craig, I'm drinking a twisted tea half and half because it has been 8,000 degrees here up in the Northeast, and I just was afraid that it was going to be another heat wave night, and I wanted something that was a little bit not heavy and overindulgent in terms of dealing with the beer. What are you drinking this evening?
I don't know, but what did your daughter call this? It wasn't twisted tea.
Yeah, it was Tweez.
Tweez, okay, yes.
Dad, you got Tweez, and I'm like, what the heck are you talking about?
So I've been fully vaccinated, so now I'm drinking Corona.
So you got COVID-19 beer.
I am drinking COVID-19 beer, yes. I feel comfortable.
Fully vaccinated. Hey, skål for this evening. You know what? I can't tell the difference between that and an Arnold Palmer anyway. You're right.
Really?
No difference there. All right,
To do the Pepsi challenge.
we're talking about the secret cost of pets. The initial purchase, determining your pet's lifestyle, how that's going to impact you. Your pet's health, how that will absolutely impact you. Now we talk not your pet's lifestyle, but your lifestyle, because dealing with vacations and other types of things. And then the question of what happens if your pet survives you. And then we do our Q&A and conclusion from there. So before I start up with this, a couple of things. One, this is, all of this time and anytime, we're always sharing our own personal opinion on everything. But I'm going to be leaning on Craig on this one because as we get into this, Craig is much more of the pet owner. I'm sort of the ancillary pet guy in terms of dealing with this. So Craig, how many pets do you actually have right now?
Physical count, 9, 11, 13 right now.
So he's got 13. Now we're talking shapes and sizes, and these are four-legged and
I have 2 dogs, 2 turtles, and 9 ducks.
there we go. So that's a lot of pets they're dealing with, right? So in deciding to make the initial purchase on that, right? So some of the considerations that somebody goes through in terms of I'm looking to do this, I guess. If you're going full bred with the dog, you're talking big money, right?
Well, I mean, it depends. I mean, even, used to be you could go to the pound and get a dog for free. It used to be you could get someone in the neighborhood, their dog was having puppies and you just get a puppy. Now what they've done is, every dog is a designer dog, your Labradoodles and your, cockapoodles and all those type of poodles. Okay. And, and then, so, it becomes more expensive. Even now, if you take and get a dog from a rescue, which is always a nice idea, that dog, usually they want a few $100s for that. The reason being is they take care of the dog, it's had its shots. Sometimes if it hasn't been spayed or neutered already, they'll do that. So that cost is already built in. So there is an initial cost to purchasing any dog. But when you go to a breeder, and some people like that because they get a puppy right from the breeder, that can be substantially more. I mean, you can be looking at anywhere from $800 to $2,500 for a dog, depending on the breed.
Right, right. And then you mentioned, so if you're getting from the breeder type of thing, like you've got to get the dog vaccinated, right?
Oh yeah. So what happens it depends on the breeder. Sometimes the breeder will have already gotten its first shots, called shots and worming, because small dogs can get what we call worms,
Okay.
which is no fun to deal with. But you always want to make sure that even if you get it from the breeder, you bring it to your own veterinarian right away and have it, checked out. Because they'll give you a health guarantee on the dog usually for the pet, but you want to make sure you have your vet check that animal out. So once again, and then so you get your initial vaccinations if it hasn't already done. You have to do deworming, all of that stuff. And then typically you also have to get your dog licensed with the town that you live in. You have to get tags.
So that's the dog tag thing.
Yeah. Well, there's two different types of tag. The dog tag is a dog license you get through the town saying I have the dog and it's registered with the town. The other one is you can actually get a chip put in your dog. So if it gets lost, then whoever finds it can run a reader over the chip in its back, and they can have its location. So if it lost its collar, it still have ID.
Wow. Okay, I didn't realize the GPS for the dog.
LoJack, yes, you LoJack in your dog. Yes.
LoJack in the dog.
It's not GPS because it doesn't track them, but if someone finds it and they read the chip with a chip reader, they can tell all the information's there.
Okay, but at basic, you've got to go to the town hall or whatever, and a permit and get a license for the dog.
And depending on the town, it could be anywhere from $25 to $50. It's just, like I said, one more fee to get started. The other thing too, if you get a little bit further, you start getting into pet gear, right? Is when you first get a pet, it's assuming that now it's kind of like when your grandparents give your kid a goldfish for their birthday, or they win it at the fair. Oh, it's 25 cents for this goldfish.
Yeah,
I got to buy the bowl and the food and the rocks and the toy and the SpongeBob thing to go on the bottom, and all the stuff that goes, all the paraphernalia. Where you've got the pet, the dog, the cat, or whatever it is you have for a pet, and now you've got to get all the toys and all the stuff to take care of that pet. So if you're going to crate the dog, or you're going to do a pen outside, or feeder bowls, leashes. If you have a horse, it can we're talking about tack. That's a whole nother stratosphere of taking care of a pet. But like I said, I have some non-typical pets. I have turtles and I have ducks, right? So the ducks, they have to build a pen. They have certain, foods they have to eat. It's all about setting it all up so that the pet is comfortable and can live comfortably.
you have to feed the thing.
Oh yeah, I have to feed the ducks. Yep. Mm-hmm. Well, I can let them free range, but we've got some foxes around right now.
Oh, okay. So there you go. Right. Yeah. And then you said making the home pet friendly, right? So now that's talking about, where is if it's going to be an indoor pet, where is it going to live in the house? How much of the house is it going to have access to roam around into?
And you may be talking about gates. It's to quarantine off certain areas of the house that you don't want the dog or other pet going into.
Correct.
You maybe have carpeting in there and you really don't want them peeing in that area.
Yeah. Right. All that fun stuff that goes on with that.
Yep.
Right. So all of that stuff adds up, right, out over time. And this is one of the things I think that really, when you start to look at these costs, that, okay, that's the initial startup.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk in a second about, the lifetime stuff, but this initial stuff can run you, a couple $100,000, right?
$100,000?
Oh, a couple of hundred to $1,000.
I guess if you're buying a thoroughbred,
what are you buying? It's a golden horse.
Buy a unicorn.
All right,
like I said,
I'd sell the Bitcoin and get a unicorn.
Yeah, I mean, what you got to do is it's more than just the initial cost of the pet. Whatever the initial cost of the pet is, I double that. for all the paraphernalia, the vaccine, you know, all the initial expenses that come along with that.
Okay. All right. So that's a good rule of thumb there to use for that in terms of looking at it, because then that gets us more into the lifestyle, right? So then not only, okay, we've got all this gear that we set up for the vaccines and all of that stuff, but now the pet, he's got to have something, right? So you're not home. What are you going to do with the dog?
Well, I mean, that's up to every individual to decide how they want to do that, but it varies. And I mean, I have, people will become so attached to their pets, they're basically their kids, right? And so they're doing everything from doggy daycare, right? I can't be there for them, but I want them to be entertained all day.
Right.
So send them to a day camp. They'll set up play dates to play with other dogs. All this is kind of good because it actually, with your pet, it socializes them. It makes them a lot more used to people, which is always a good thing, and other animals, because you want your pets to interact well with other pets. Nothing worse than having a pet that can't be around anything else, because then it causes you more problems, stress. How you exercise, especially young dogs need a lot of, and young pets need a lot of exercise. They're active just like kids, right? And if they don't exercise, then they get into trouble because they're looking for something to do, right? Tearing apart your house, chewing your shoes, all that good fun stuff.
Right, which then gets added into the cost, because any damage to my house, any damage to my clothes, all that stuff has to be replaced, and now I've got more cost on top of that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The other thing too, pet friends, sometimes people start off getting one pet and then they all of a sudden get another pet because that one's lonely, right? And that's how my duck collection started. We had found one duck, and you can't have just one duck, they get lonely. So all of a sudden now we're adding multiple ducks, right? Same thing with the dogs. Sometimes you do better with a companion when you're not around, right? Someone that, because they're social animals.
Right.
Most animals are social in nature. The cats tend to be less so, but they still are social. They still like to be around people. And so, having, a pet friend helps take some of the burden off of you. You got to be away at work, or you can't afford to do pet daycare.
Right, but some of this, like the play date or play friends or exercising, some of that, right, is something that you're doing. But like you're talking about, in some cases where it's pet daycare or doggy care, or paying somebody to come and walk the dog for you, right? Yep. That becomes that ongoing cost, right? That's another add-on to the cost of what's happening there.
Oh my God, yeah, I have some clients, and they're spending $1,000, $1,500 a month on their pets. I mean, even just you talk about just feeding the animal every month, it costs you $50 to $100.
Right.
So yeah, it can be, it's an investment when you add that member to your family.
Right, and some of that is consideration, like you talked about. Some of this, like the doggy daycare and having somebody else walk it, that's one of those, okay, we can do without in terms of going through it. But like you just talked about, some of that other stuff, the gear and all of that, that's a cost you've got to factor in. Like you said, what did you say? It was factor in 2 times the cost of the pet for that.
Well, double it. So like if you spent $1,000 or $1,500 on an animal, then you're probably going to spend another $1,000 or $1,500 getting the initial setup.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, and then now we come to the one that's probably the biggest one in terms of the grand scheme of everything, which is the health, right? And going through this, because you've got I know there's all the vaccines when you first get the animal, but I'm assuming that they have, like we do, like an ongoing type of thing.
Well, that's the other thing too. When you're just selecting a pet, some pets are more susceptible to health issues than others are.
Okay.
Right? And I'm only keep going to dog because dogs are very popular, cats are very popular. Those are the 2 most popular pets out there right now. And what happens is, especially with dogs, we talk about designer breeds, and we didn't get into it, but we had up on the screen, people show their animals. They'll show pets. Right, they bring them in. They win prizes for best in breed. Probably seen some of that with the.
The Westminster Kennel Club.
Right, absolutely, right. The problem though is sometimes when they're breeding for those things, those characteristics, smaller nose, different type. Especially have you ever seen the English bulldogs? pushed in faces,
Right.
snouts, and they're breathing. It causes breathing issues. It causes hip issues. That type of selective breeding for those traits is not necessarily the best thing for that animal. So while it may be cute, you got to be aware that if you're going to get an English bulldog because it's very cute, you may have a lot of ongoing medical bills.
Right.
They can get hip dysplasia, they can have breathing issues, they can get asthma, all those things that go along with it. Where mutts, typical mutts, those are crossbred dogs, tend to be healthier. If they don't have a lot of those issues. Why? Because they're, it's a more natural environment. They're closer to what they should be, and not selectively bred for those pieces. So
Now, if somebody was thinking about getting a pet, right, as far as this conversation is concerned, is there some place that they're going that they can look up? This type of dog is predisposed to have this type of condition or these chronic illnesses type of thing?
yeah, and like Westminster show that you said, you can go there and they're all AKC registered. For the AKC registration, if you go to their website, you'll have a list of all the different breeds that are out there, and then you can start looking that up. You can also go to any kind of bookstore, and they'll have a section on pets, and you can get a section on specific types of breeds of dogs that you're looking at, or get a book that talks about all the different breeds. Because the other thing, it's not just about the health; it's also about personality. Certain dogs or certain animals are bred with certain personality traits. Some dogs are herders, right? That's what their job is. It's
Right.
high activity. You see these dogs that jump. You see the competitions where they have them running through obstacles, or with certain dogs that are predisposed for that. Some, I have a client, he buys a dog for hunting, right?
Yeah.
Pointer dog, and then they chase stuff and all that.
Yeah, no, my sister used to breed Springer Spaniels.
Right, high energy dog.
Yeah.
If you're 65-year-old and sedentary, you're not buying a Springer Spaniel. It's not fair for you or the dog, right?
They were all over the place. Yes.
So you really want a dog that's going to match you and the family environment it's coming into. Like labs tend to be very, very popular for young families. Why? Because they have a very sweet disposition, very easy to train. German Shepherds are a very popular dog, but they can require a stiffer hand, right? Because they're more assertive and they can be more dominant. So it's really about matching the pet to the environment that you're going to be having them go into.
Right. And so then, the next thing that comes up, obviously, is the decision about spading and neutering as far as the animal is concerned. But
Parker says, right.
But I'm assuming that's a big chunk of money, too.
Yes, it can be $500 to $600 today to have a dog spayed or neutered. And that's smoothly. Right.
Right. So if that's a decision that, this sort of goes hand in hand with that. I'm making the determination this is the type of breed, but I'm going to spade or neuter. You've got to be set up for that.
Well, if you're not going, if you haven't spayed or neutered, there's nothing really to set up for. You got to bring.
Well, I meant money wise. We're talking about the cost.
Oh,
here.
the cost. Yes, it's another expense that comes into having the pet.
Yeah.
The problem is if you don't, and your dog gets away from you and gets pregnant, if it's a female, right? If it's a male, you don't have a big issue, but female,
if they track you down, right?
right? And all of a sudden now you've got puppies. Now you got a whole other issue, right? So spading and neutering, it's another thing that is a personal decision.
Right, and then we talked about feeding them, obviously, with any type of pet that you have in terms of the cost of the ongoing. But so for you, you've got 2 dogs. Like, what are you spending on feeding the 2 dogs?
That's really interesting because my dogs, when they were younger, all they had was dry food. That worked out pretty well. You buy a big bag of dog food every few weeks, and they're small dogs, so it would last a whole month. So it maybe cost me $40, $50 a month to feed the dogs. But now they're older, and one of them's teeth aren't work as well as it used to. So now it's getting wet food. Well, now I'm spending $3 or $4 a day on wet food for this dog. Right? So now you're talking $150 a month, so it tripled, the nutritional need.
And that's just the one dog.
That's for one dog, right? And then I've seen people who, they have them on special diets, and those can, sometimes their food can be almost as expensive as ours.
Right.
People keeping the food in the refrigerator. I've seen, people actually making chicken and liver and all these other dishes for their dogs. So, yeah, it can get crazy. Yeah.
Right. So then that becomes an ongoing cost in terms of dealing with it. And then the sickness and injury thing, that's like the likelihood that more than the, just like humans, right? The likelihood that the dog is going to, or cat is going to get sick or hurt at some point in its lifetime is a probability. It's more probably likely.
Oh, you can count on it. And the issue becomes is, you just like, you can tell your kid no, you can tell your dog no, but if they chase a squirrel and they get into an accident, they get into a fight with another dog, or, they just, they swallow something they shouldn't have swallowed, which can happen all the time. They will grab anything and just eat it. Right. And like I said, I had a duck recently that, went lame and, had to have care. All kinds of things can happen at any point in time, just like it can with us. And then there's expenses that go along with that. Now, there is, and I think we touched maybe on a screen earlier, there is pet insurance you can get. It's a small cost, when you first get your pet.
Right, you're going to bring it up on the next screen. We'll talk about pet insurance in terms of dealing with that. And we'll segue into that in a second, because they do want to say, because you have death on there in terms of dealing with it. And I'm assuming that's putting the animal down, the animal or the burial cost. I mean, is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah. So once again, they don't recover from injury, the dog. The pet gets old and dies of natural causes, like they all do. Then yeah, how do you deal with that? So the issue becomes if the dog just dies naturally, or whatever the pet is, bird, cat, dog, whatever it is, you just die. Well, then it's a matter of disposal, right? And you can bring it to the vet and they'll dispose of it for you. And there's usually a small charge for that. I've had, I had a dog I had for 17 years and had her cremated. That cost $150, for the cremation, the box, and all of that. A lot of times you can donate the animal, because like Tufts will take donations of the pet's body and they'll use it for the veterinary school.
Yeah.
But there's, you're talking $200 to $300 to have a pet euthanized if there's some sick and you get to that point where you have to do the euthanasia.
Right. Which leads into the conversation with it, which is the pet insurance, right? And whether or not pet insurance actually becomes, really, like you said, pet insurance, it's a premium. It's like any other insurance. You're paying a premium for the coverage, and then the coverage is usually done on like a rebate. It's I'm paying it, and then I'm submitting the bill, and they're going to reimburse me. Reimbursement was the information I was looking for.
Right. Yeah. So doing it on a reimbursement basis. The issue, why it's a good idea to get pet insurance if this is a pet you plan on keeping forever, a forever home type pet, is because, like you said, if a dog or a pet gets sick and they have to have an operation, it can be $3,000-$4,000.
Right.
I've had people who decided to euthanize a dog because they couldn't afford to do the operation on the dog. I can't spend $3,000 on my dog. I can't.
Right. That's exactly how the New York Times refers to it. They refer to euthanasia as the not being able to continue to pay or care for the dog, so I have to put it down, or a pet at that point.
Right, and sometimes, like I said, it may be, like we talked about earlier, a hip dysplasia. For the dog itself, for all intents and purposes, the rest of the animal's healthy except they can't walk, right? So now you're getting into all these other expenses that come along with trying to keep that pet alive. I had a duck go lame, and the woman said, "Well, it's going to cost us $400 or $500 to do all this stuff with your duck. Do you want us to put it down?" So, I have some experience with taking care of them, so I just took care of it myself, and she's doing great now. But the issue is, in most situations, you're going to put down the pet because I'm not spending $500 on a duck.
Right, but the pet insurance, one thing with that, with going back to, because we talked about at the beginning of this, which is that a lot of times there are pre-existing conditions, and specifically, like you mentioned, those specific breeds that have those chronic illnesses or situations that they are predisposed to, they're not going to cover it.
Well, I don't know. I don't know enough about the pet.
So that's my understanding. The other is that you should get pet insurance if you're going to get it. The earlier, the better. The younger the pet, basically, because then they won't cover. Right. So that they have no it's like anything. It's like insurance for humans. The older you get, the more costly it's going to be. But also, the animal could have developed some sort of condition, and then therefore it's not going to get covered for that. So the recommendation is, if you're going to look at getting it, get it when the pet is young, a puppy, a kitten, whatever. The younger, the better, because one, it's going to be less, and two, there's probably not going to be any, unless the breed itself is predisposed to some sort of illness, have anything that's going to be pre-existing as far as a condition is concerned.
Yep.
All right, so now we get into this is not the pet's lifestyle now. We're talking about your lifestyle, right? So this is you going on vacation, but hey, you've got this pet. What do I do?
Yeah, and so that's for us. Like, I'm going away next week on a vacation, right? So, and typically, if my children were coming with me, my kids, then we would have to board the dogs, or we'd have to have someone come over and take care of them. So
Right.
there's an expense that goes with that. So it could cost me several $100s to have my dogs taken care of while I'm away for the week, which means I got to add that to the cost of the vacation.
Yep.
Now, the other option for some people is they take the pet with them, which is, more and more popular. The issue then is you have to find a place that's pet friendly. Not all places are pet friendly.
Right. You got to actually be planning that vacation around where can I go, where it's pet friendly. I know this from people who've done that, gone down the Cape, because there's not that many places on the Cape that are pet friendly in terms of finding a place that you want to be.
The other issue is, how are you getting your pet to that vacation spot? Are you driving? Are you going by bus? Are you going by plane? Because then there's transporting the pet, and there's a cost associated with that as well. And there's also stress on the animal. The pet's got to be put in a crate and put in the bottom of an airplane. I mean, you don't even like flying. The dog has no idea what's going on. It's just a dark spot with lots of new noises, and everybody down there, all the other pets that are down there. So, stress on the animal as far as that concerned. And like I said, the additional cost. They won't just let you take your cat and let it sit in your lap as you're flying across country. So just another thing to keep in mind, how you want to make sure.
That is I think one of the considerations that really sort of goes along with this is, because some of it is, as you said, cost, but a lot of it is, hey, now it's suddenly I've got to have this other consideration. I have my lifestyle, but I have somebody else's, in this case, the pet, that I have to be considering if I'm going to go someplace or take off or whatever. So certainly if you're somebody who travels a lot for work or business or whatever, that, you got to be thinking about what type of pet or animal you're going to have in that situation.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, a dog needs a lot of social activity, right? It needs you around. You can't just leave it. It gets depressed if you leave it too long. Cats, well, they're more solitary. They don't mind. They don't miss you as much, they still miss you, but as long as they have their food and they have they're a little bit more independent. You get a fish, it doesn't miss you at all.
Doesn't even know you were there.
Yeah, like, oh, right. It just keeps swimming around the bowl. I don't know.
Well, it gets fed, right?
One gets fed. Yeah. So if it's an animal you think you're going to travel with, you may not want to have a 200-pound Saint Bernard.
Yeah.
You want a smaller dog,
right?
Only because it's
consideration, right?
Or a horse. You're not going to take your horse with you, right?
Oh, yeah.
A parrot or a bird, that's even more difficult. How do you travel with one of those? People into amphibians. They have snakes and lizards and all kinds of stuff. So it'd be tough to find someone to take care of you with a boa constrictor.
Yeah, right. Come over and snake sit for me.
But once again, your lifestyle too.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now, in the last part here is in terms of breeding, is what happens is if the pet survives you, right? So even if you're young, there is the likelihood that you can pass, and then what happens to the pet?
Yeah. So that's a big concern, for older people as well. When people are retired and decide they want to get pets, and now the concern is some dogs can live 12 to 20 years, depending on the breed. Cats can live 15 to 22, 23 years. If you get a parrot or a bird or something like that, they can live 50 years. There's pets that can absolutely, live longer than you. So the concern is, okay, so I get this dog. I love this dog. I'm 65 years old, but 74, 75, I die. Well, the
Right.
dog's still alive. Now what happens? I have a geriatric dog and I'm passed away. Or I have a cat that's in its midlife, and who's going to take care of the dog, that animal? And so there's that, that's where a lot of times you'll see them ending up in shelters, right? And the problem is, if you get into a no-kill shelter, then they'll keep the pet until someone actually comes and adopts it. But a lot of times that's not the case, and these animals end up euthanized.
Right. And so is this something that like somebody, makes reparations in their will, right, about the animal? Is that how that's dealt with? That,
Well,
hey, I want to leave X and the dog needs to get this care type of thing?
that would be the perfect way to do it. Unfortunately, as you and I know, Tom, not enough people even do their own will at all, let alone include their pets in their will, right? Pets are, not necessarily seen as a major issue when they're talking about assets and survivorship and estate planning, all that. Now, when you have larger animals, right, then that comes into play a lot more often.
Like horses, you mean?
Absolutely, right? Because the expense is much greater, the care need is much greater. And so, that's when you'll actually see people setting up trusts for their animals. So it's not only someone can care for it, but the money to pay for the care, as we just talked about, it can be expensive. And if there's no funds to take care of that, then once again, you're putting someone in a position where now the animal is getting euthanized, not because it's sick or unhealthy, but because you can't afford to care for it.
Correct.
Right? And so is that what you mean? So it's kind of like a Valhalla situation, right? The king dies, everybody goes with him.
Right. Yeah, we're gonna put it you're gonna put it in the place with him in terms of dealing with that. Yeah, I mean that's an interesting take on that. Um, all right, and so then the conclusion here, right? Ultimately, pet ownership is a big responsibility. This is something that you absolutely have to, really take your time and decide on if you're looking at becoming an owner. If you're already owner, our suggestion is just like we talk about with individuals about putting money aside for your own purposes as far as emergency reserves, right, Craig? You'd say this as well. You should have a separate bucket that's for the pet, right?
Yes, it should be a carve out in your emergency reserves or part of a consideration when you're putting emergency reserves together. It's like you would for your kids or yourself. You just money there to take care of your pets if something should happen. Yeah.
Yeah, and the whole idea here is there are many benefits of being a pet owner. We know that they're very rewarding, and there's a lot that goes with that. It's just for us, our conversation here is more about making sure that you are understanding and planning for those additional costs and expenses, because the reality is, because I was doing research on this prior to going in this, that people think that the average, what it's going to cost me on this pet for a lifetime is, pennies. It's like the cost of the pet, and then I'm not really going to, spend too much more than that in terms of it, without thinking about you're going to be, like we talked about, food and gear and all of this stuff that goes along with it, and that the lifetime expense of a dog or a cat's like $15,000 or something.
Oh yeah, absolutely. All of that. Yep.
Right. So that's the reality to it. And so for us, as we say that, part of this is trying to help everybody sort of get that handle on things, whether you're dealing with your own stuff, whether you're dealing with the stuff and trying to figure it out with a pet or a child or whatever the case may be, you really need to have that vision of where you want to get to. And part of what we do with that is trying to help everybody, like we said, have a better relationship. The whole idea here is planning is the idea, and sometimes it just you need a little help getting started or getting your house in order. And so for anybody, if you ever want to, we make ourselves available. You can just type yes into the chat box, and we're happy to reach out and answer questions and connect with you and see if there's something we can do to help. We will send out an evaluation form. That evaluation form just helps us make sure that we're relevant and topical. If you have something that you want to hear, a topic that you want us to, do a little research on and present on, you can feel free to shoot us back the information on that. There is a link in the chat box right now, hopefully that Craig is dropping in at this point. This is Craig and I in our more formal attire. That's us when we're out and about, which hopefully will come shortly now in the great grand scheme of everything. But when we're out and about and doing our more formal stuff, we usually see us out there in our jerseys, whether it's Patriots, Red Sox, or Bruins, depending on the season and what's happening. So what's on tap? So next week, we're going to do creating a retirement paycheck. So you've stopped working, you got to have your money working for you. And then on the 24th, we're going to do the vacation of your dreams, which will lead us into the summertime where we're going to change some of the hours for what we're doing. And as we go forward here, for right now, that's what's on tap for the next 2 weeks. And then Craig, any questions in the chat box?
Nope, we had a nice comment from somebody who said good info shared regarding pet care before she had to jump out. So that was nice of her to say.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you for that. And so if you ever have any questions, ask us. We can help with that. You can visit the website, www.ariesfoundation.org. Or if you want to, like I said, just shoot us an email, info@ariesfoundation.org. And on that note, I am going to stop the share and say good night to everybody.